Hello, it's Deborah from the Attic, and today I want to share with you these new products from CraftStash. This is a range called Everyday Journaling. They've been put together and designed by Helen Colebrook and produced by CraftStash, and CraftStash have sent these to me so that I can share them with you. And the collection includes stickers, washi tapes, papers, stamps, and lots of dies. And I want to show you over 2 or 3 videos coming up ways that you can use these and adapt them to suit your style. Let's begin by looking at the paper products, the stickers and the washi tapes. These are 10 sheets of washi tapes and they come in a variety of thicknesses, and they're really useful for journaling on the go because they're flat and therefore you can store them in your journal itself. Next, I want to show you the stickers. These are really lovely. These are hand-drawn flowers and buds and leaves. There are many sheets inside the sticker pack and they also include words. The dimensions of these have been very cleverly thought through as well, and I'll show you that a little bit later on. The other thing I like about the words in the sticker set is that if you are not confident with your own handwriting, these will give you a great start on your journal. And because they're stickers and because they're little flowers, it's a really quick way to add some nice artistic elements to your journal without feeling under pressure. This pack contains not only paper sheets, which are really nicely drawn, but also extra elements such as flowers on plain white card. And this, something which I really found intriguing because I haven't seen these anywhere else before. So this comprises flowers and leaves and other foliage, but it's been printed onto vellum or parchment. And it looks absolutely beautiful because it has that slightly ethereal quality to it. I'm going to spread these out on my mat so that you can see what that transparent look does to them. The other thing that's included in this set are blocks of text, again printed onto this vellum or parchment. I'm not quite sure what it is. I'd probably guess at vellum from the feel of it. But these are words that are printed in white, and you can use these and attach them to your journal as well. They're just beautifully thought through and they work together so nicely. In this little bag, which is also part of the paper set, we've got a selection again of flowers and leaves, and these are all cut out already for you to glue into your journals or use as you choose. And now moving on to the papers. I'm going to show you a way that you can use these papers to suit your own style or your own colour palette. These sheets are very fresh, they're very clean and pretty. They're also quite cleverly designed. In this one you can see there's a grid and in this one there are lines. What's clever about them is the spacing between them because it's 5mm square, and that's an exact match for the standard dot book which is used in journaling. It helps you with your layouts, and that's why you know these papers have been designed by somebody who understands bullet journaling herself. Next, I'd like to show you the stamps. There are 4 sets and they have a variety of words and images on them. And there are lots of other icons that might be appropriate to the sort of journaling that you want to do. And then there are some phrases and words telling you what priority you should give things. Now, in this pack, it's mostly about days of the week and months, and I really like the way that these are laid out, and I like the size as well. I'll come back to the size again in a moment. And in this set, there are some really beautiful hand-drawn little mini flowers, and there are also the months of the year, and these are done in a slightly italicized font. Finally, there is this set which has all sorts of frames, lovely little icons, and all of these little boxes will also match with a 5-dot journal book. Finally, let's look at the dies that are available in this range. There are 3 sets, and in this set there are lots of flowers and circles, and the images on the front of the packaging are not the same as the actual dies inside the envelopes. The dies are larger, and I'll show you that when we get to them. I'm just pointing out my favourite die here, the one that looks like torn paper that's been torn away from a ring binder. I really love that. And this is the largest set. There are 25 dies in this set. This is a very generous size, and there are lots of tags and lots of pockets. There are also some really nice little detailed embellishments, and I'm going to show you how to use those as well. Because I wanted to show you real life ways of using these, I'm using my own journal. This is my Thoughts and Ideas journal, and it's where I'm going to be using most of the products from this range. The first thing I want to make is a little home to house my watercolour card offcuts. This is an expensive medium, and I don't throw it away, but I do tend to lose it because I don't have a sensible place to store it. So it's going to be ideal to store in my Thoughts and Ideas journal. And I'm going to use some of the paper from the set. And I'm going to use two different colours of paper because I want to show you a way that you can make the paper look a bit more sepia and vintage. And I'm going to use another piece of paper, this light green with the beautiful white flowers, to make it look a little bit more grungy. And now I want to show you the difference in size from the illustrations of the dies to the actual size of the dies. I hope you can see that this one, for example, this is a really beautiful tag die, and if I set it against the one on the pack, the illustration on the pack, you can see it is larger. So it's a really generous, nice size die. I've used this in quite a few projects already, actually. I want to show you how I'm going to lay out all of my little bits and pieces, but first of all I want to show you the square that's going on the inside. This has got like little stitched lines, so you can choose this or you can choose not to use it. The option is yours. This is how I've got all of my pieces laid out ready to go through my Sizzix machine, and I've stuck them all down with washi tape. This is a great way of making sure that things don't slip out of place. I've removed some of the items already, but I want to show you this pocket die. The outside edge is a cutting edge, but the inside lines are folding lines. I've also used another little dotted insert that looks like stitching on the inside of the pocket. It's a really nice effect, and I'm going to use the folding lines to help me crease the folds over, ready to be turned into a proper little pocket. That's a perfect shape now, and I can slip other little bits and bobs into there. I think the colours are just gorgeous. They work so well together. Here are all of my cut-out pieces. You can see I've used green paper and I've used a slightly peachy orangey paper. Now I'm going to share a tale of ink. The ink that I'm using here to ink around the outside is an archival ink called watering can because it makes it easier for me to control the smudge. So it's going to give me quite a harsh line around the outside of my pocket. And now I'm going to use a little foam applicator. This is actually a medical oral foam swab, and you can buy these very, very cheaply online. Here I'm using the sponge to try and soften and smudge the ink into the centre of the envelope. And if you get it when it's still quite wet, that will work, but it didn't work as well as I wanted it to. So I'm going to use it to ink up my words, and I'm going to do my smudging with a different ink, which I'll show you in a moment. Here's a tip for new stamps. When you've got a brand new stamp, it's a good idea to test it 2 or 3 times on a piece of paper first to make sure that the stamp will give you a really good impression. That's usually all it takes. So that now that I know my stamp is good to go, I'm going to stamp down the right hand side of my pocket. The words will go slightly off the right hand edge, but that's fine because all I want to do is add a little bit more texture and interest to my pocket. Now I'm going to swap out my archival ink that did the words, and I'm going to use a Distress Oxide ink called Weathered Wood. Now, Distress Oxide is sometimes a little bit of a tricky beast because it can give you more ink coverage than you actually want. The solution is to work on a waste piece of paper. You can see I have a white piece of paper under my work area, and as you take the ink from the pad, knock some of it off onto your waste paper before you apply it to your project. This means that you control the amount of ink going on. You can always add more, but you can't take it away. I've worked all around the outside edge of my pocket now, and I hope you can see it's given a really nice grey, soft vignette effect to the whole pocket. I'm going to do the same using the peachy orangey papers that I've also die cut, and this time I'm using Distress Oxide Vintage Photo. This time I'm going in at an angle around those outside edges first. I'm not knocking the ink off on this occasion. It will depend on the ink pad. Sometimes they can be very juicy and moist, so you do need to knock off a little bit of the ink. This one has had so much use, it's a lot drier. And then once I've gone around the outside edge, I'll put my piece down on my scrap paper and I'll very gently smudge the ink into the centre. I hope you can see how applying ink can change the tone of the paper. Now I'm going to take some different words and I'm going to put them onto my block, and this time I'm going to use a VersaFine ink called Sepia. I've stamped down the words drifting slightly off the right hand side of my pocket, and I'm going to add a few more on the bottom left, slightly drifting off the bottom edge. I'm going to set this aside to dry while I work on another piece that I've prepared. I want to add the word tasks to the tab at the top of this piece, but it's attached to some other words in a row, and I don't want the rest of those. So I'm going to remove it from its container, and I'm going to cut the word free from the rest. I've mounted it onto a little block, and as before, I'm going to condition the stamp by doing a couple of tests using my archival grey ink. And when I'm happy with it, I'm going to stamp it in the centre of the tab. I want to show you why the sizing of these words is very clever. I've stamped the tasks word into my ideas book, and this is the 5mm square grid book, and you can see how well the words fit into that grid. And if I zoom out a little more, you can see that the grids on the papers also match the grids in the books. It was only when I started using this collection that I realised how well thought out everything had been. Now I'm going to glue the two pockets that I've created into the bottom of my book, and I'm using a 3-in-1 beacon glue to glue these down. The reason that I'm using this glue is because when it dries, it doesn't buckle the paper. It will dry completely flat, making it nice and easy to write over. And that's really useful to know if you're gluing anything onto paper. If you're gluing cardstock to cardstock, you can use pretty much any sort of glue. But if it's a thin paper, this is great. I'm going to use my stamping block to hold my pocket into position while it glues. Now that I have my pockets where I want them to be, I want to show you a little extra thing that you can do if you have a spare piece of ribbon. I'm going to use two of the words and phrases from this stamp set. I've got them on my blocks already, and I've got a piece of ribbon. Now this is different to the piece of ribbon that I'll show you in a moment that I have in my book. I'm using black StazOn ink, and I'm using StazOn because this won't smudge and it will stay in position on your piece of ribbon. Ink the stamp up and then lightly press the block down onto the ribbon. The ribbon that you need to use for this has to be a fairly densely woven ribbon. You might have to do a little bit of experimentation first to find a ribbon that won't allow the ink to fray into the rest of the fabric of the ribbon. Once you've covered the length of the ribbon with phrases, you're done. Just set it to one side to make sure it's properly dried, and then use some glue just to add this to the back page of your book, and then you can fold it into the page that you're working on. So thank you for your time. Thank you for watching, as ever. I'm going to leave links to where you can find these products on the CraftStash website below. It's well worth checking out. They have many discounts. And I will also leave you a link for Helen Colebrook's YouTube channel because I'm sure you will learn a great deal from her as well. Until we meet again, take care.